Synopsis of the Republic by Plato. Book 1. Socrates and Glaucon are detained at the Piraeus. The scene is set at Polemarchus' house. Socrates converses with Cephalus about old age and the benefits of wealth, and introduces the topic of justice. It is not simply a matter of being truthful and returning what one owes. Discussion between Socrates and Polemarchus. Justice, it is proposed, is a matter of giving what is appropriate. To friends, giving good. To enemies, bad. But in what context? And won't the just person also be best at injustice? Besides, who are our friends and enemies? And is it just to treat even an enemy badly? Thrasymachus speaks up. His definition, justice is what is good for the stronger. But does this mean whatever the stronger thinks is good? Clarification is volunteered by Polemarchus and Cleitophon. Thrasymachus insists that the stronger, to the extent that he is stronger, does not make mistakes. Socrates counters with an analysis of art or skill. It aims at what is good for its object, not its practitioner. Thrasymachus objects. Shepherds do not aim at what is good for their sheep. Socrates distinguishes the shepherd's concern for his sheep from his concern to earn a living. He suggests that the best rulers are reluctant to rule. He offers 3 arguments in favor of the just life over the unjust life. The just man is wise and good. The unjust man is ignorant and bad. Injustice produces internal disharmony and prevents effective action. The just person lives a happier life than the unjust person. But it remains to be discovered what justice is. Book 2. Glaucon, as devil's advocate, renews Thrasymachus' challenge. His speech against justice. Justice has its origin in a compromise, is practiced only because unavoidable, is desirable only for its rewards, which can be gained by the mere appearance of justice. Adeimantus' speech reinforcing Glaucon's critique. 2 ways of describing justice are widespread, as something praiseworthy not for itself but for its rewards, or as something dissociated from pleasure and happiness. Both these views tend to corrupt the young. Socrates is requested to praise justice for itself, not for the reputation it brings. Socrates comes to the defense of justice. He proposes to look for justice in the city first, then for its equivalent in the individual, and begins by imagining the origins of civic life. In response to Glaucon's objection that this hypothetical city is uncivilized, Socrates describes instead a luxurious city. He proposes that a professional army will be needed to guard the city, made up of guardians who must be fierce to enemies, but gentle to their own people, and educated with special care. Traditional stories about the gods are to be censored. God should be presented to them as good and as a cause only of good, also as unchanging and as refraining from deception. Book 3. Discussion of the guardian's education continues. The qualities that stories should promote in them, in addition to the respect for authority and the social harmony already considered, are courage, resistance to grief, resistance to laughter, respect for truth, but including a willingness to tell lies when necessary, self-discipline. Discussion turns from the contents of stories to the manner in which they are told, and Socrates makes a distinction between simple narrative and narrative through imitation. He imposes limitations on the guardian's familiarity with and performance of imitative poetry. They should confine themselves to the austere and strict style and not use either the elaborate or the mixed styles. Equivalent restrictions are imposed on the types of music to be included in the guardian's education. Finally, Socrates makes a generalization about the importance of good art in forming good character and connects the beauty of art with the beauty that inspires erotic attachment. Turning to the guardian's physical education, Socrates recommends a straightforward diet and avoidance of recourse to doctors, which he associates with the avoidance of litigation. Physical education should aim to benefit the soul rather than the body. A balance between intellect and spiritedness is the ideal. Socrates describes how rulers should be selected from among the guardians. He designs a patriotic myth to be believed by subsequent generations in the newly founded city, and briefly sketches the guardians' social organization, forbidding them private property. Book 4, Adamantous Objects. Will the guardians be happy? Socrates explains that the task is to make the whole city happy, not any particular group within it. He mentions further requirements. If the city as a whole is to be happy, both its wealth and its size must be limited. He emphasizes once more the importance of education and urges conservatism when it comes to amending laws. For its religious rituals, the city can defer to the traditional authorities. Now that the city has been theoretically established, discussion turns to its justice. Socrates proposes that its justice will be what remains after its wisdom, courage, and self-discipline have been identified. The city's wisdom is located in its ruling class, its courage is located in the army, and its self-discipline consists in the fact that its subjects are willing to be ruled by those best suited to rule. Its justice, finally, is a matter of each class performing its proper function. The corresponding virtues in the individual are now to be identified. First, the general correspondence between city and individual is defended, prompting the question whether the three elements in the soul, corresponding to the three classes in the city, have distinct functions. Socrates distinguishes the function of the rational from that of the desiring element, and that of the spirited element from each of the others in turn. He explains how the virtues of the individual correspond in their elements and their structure to those of the city. An individual is just when each of the elements internal to his soul performs its proper function. This account is compatible with conventional beliefs. Justice, then, is a healthy balance of the soul's components, and injustice an unhealthy imbalance. Socrates now comes to the question which Glaucon and Adeimantus originally asked him to answer: which is more profitable, justice or injustice? A proper response will require examination of the various unjust societies and of the unjust individuals that correspond to each. Book 5, Socrates is about to describe the varieties of unjust society when he is distracted by a whispered transaction between Polemarchus and Adeimantus. Invited to speak up, they demand a more detailed account from him of the proposal that women and children should be held in common among the guardians. Socrates begins with an argument that female members of the guardian class should perform the same tasks as male guardians. Against the objection that women should be assigned different tasks from men because they differ from men by nature, he responds that this natural difference is not relevant when it comes to running a city. Having shown that this proposal is feasible, he also argues that it is optimal. Socrates' second proposal is that there should be no separate families among the guardians. He postpones consideration of its feasibility in order to consider its optimality, and begins by explaining the sexual and eugenic regulations that will be required of the guardians, before describing how these arrangements will achieve a unity among the guardians that can then extend to all the citizens. He points out that, living this way, the guardians are likely to be extremely happy. Once again, the feasibility of these arrangements is mooted. Socrates launches into an account of how the guardians will make war, but is presently interrupted by Glaucon, who demands to know precisely how it is possible for a society such as this to come into being. After a preamble explaining that the theoretical model of the ideal city remains valid, even if its feasibility cannot be demonstrated, Socrates responds that the model cannot become reality unless philosophers become kings, or kings become philosophers. To justify this claim, an analysis of philosophy is required. Only philosophers recognize and take pleasure in the single form behind the multiplicity of appearances. Socrates offers an argument to distinguish the philosopher's knowledge from mere opinion. Book 6. Given the superior discernment of philosophers, Socrates continues, it is to them that the city should look for guidance, provided they can also be shown to be capable of gaining practical experience and of achieving the full range of human virtue. The character traits of the philosopher do in fact cover this range, being love of learning, truthfulness, self-discipline, greatness of spirit, courage, justice, quickness of mind, good memory, refinement, and charm. Adeimantus objects that actual philosophers are either useless or bad. Socrates responds with an analogy to show that it is not philosophers who are to blame for their uselessness, but those who refuse to make use of them. He describes how the philosophic nature tends, because of its very excellence, to become distorted by society, which would ignore a less outstanding character. He warns against various impostors who claim the mantle of philosophy and who far outnumber the few philosophers who manage to escape corruption by society. He explains how it is possible for a city to cope with the challenge of philosophy and to become free of the prejudice against it. He concludes that Callipolis, the ancient city of Korea, is both optimal and not unfeasible. Turning to the question of how philosopher kings should be educated, Socrates argues that their most important branch of study will be the study of the good, and offers 3 analogies to explain it: the sun, the line. Book 7. The final analogy to explain the study of the good is that of the cave. Education ought to turn the eye of the soul away from the shadows with which it is surrounded in the cave of society and lead it to true understanding in the sunlit world above. But philosophers who attain this understanding must be made to return to the cave and rule there. Socrates explains how it is the study of mathematics that will do the job of drawing the soul out of the cave. He analyzes each branch of mathematics in turn: arithmetic and number, plane geometry, solid geometry, astronomy, harmonics. The culmination of the philosopher king's education is the study of dialectic, which brings him to understand the good. But Socrates cannot give Glaucon a clear idea of what dialectic is or how it achieves its end. Instead, they discuss what qualifications are necessary for such a course of study and at what age the various studies should be undertaken. Socrates concludes with a suggestion about the easiest way to bring Callipolis into being. Book 8. Socrates and Glaucon take stock of the argument so far and resume the topic that was interrupted at the beginning of Book 5. The 4 main types of unjust regime will be systematically described, together with the corresponding types of unjust individual, beginning with the least degenerate and proceeding to the most. Socrates once again offers a general justification of the correspondence between city and individual. He explains how timocracy arises from aristocracy, the characteristics of timocracy, the character of the correspondingly timocratic individual, and how an individual becomes timocratic. Oligarchy, how it arises from timocracy, its characteristics, how the correspondingly oligarchic individual becomes oligarchic, and what his character is. Democracy, how it arises from oligarchy, its characteristics, how the correspondingly democratic individual becomes democratic, and what his character is. Tyranny, how it arises from democracy and what its characteristics are. Book 9, the tyrannical individual, how he becomes tyrannical and what his character is. Socrates demonstrates this individual's unhappiness by applying the correspondence between city and individual. Unhappiest of all is the tyrannical individual who becomes tyrant of a city. Socrates concludes this first proof that the just are happier than the unjust with a final ranking of the individual characters in respect of happiness. Second proof that the just are happier than the unjust. Socrates distinguishes 3 fundamental human types: the lovers of wisdom, lovers of honor, and lovers of profit, and argues that we should trust the wisdom lover's judgment that his way of life is the most pleasant. Third proof that the just are happier than the unjust. Socrates analyzes the nature of pleasure. Relief from pain can seem pleasurable, and most, even if not all, bodily pleasures are no more than a relief from pain. The only truly fulfilling pleasure, by contrast, is that which comes from understanding. Socrates concludes with the claim that each element in the soul can find its proper pleasure if the part that loves wisdom is in control. He calculates the multiple by which the best life is more pleasant than the worst. He offers a final vindication of justice with the help of a comparison between the soul and an imaginary creature of multiple form. Book 10. Socrates returns to the topic of poetry discussed in books 2 and 3. What is imitation? Socrates answers his question by considering the example of a couch and distinguishing between the form of the couch, the manufactured couch, and a painting of a couch. He concludes that the products of imitation are far removed from truth. Poets, like painters, are imitators. Socrates argues that if they really had the expertise conventionally attributed to them, they would not have been content to remain mere poets. Their knowledge is in fact inferior to a maker's knowledge, which is in turn inferior to a user's knowledge. Socrates turns from the topic of what imitators know to that of how they affect their audiences. Using a comparison with optical illusions, he argues that imitative poetry aims to stir the irrational element in the soul. Worst of all, it can corrupt even decent people. He concludes that there is no place for such poetry in Callipolis, but only for verses in praise of the gods and of good men. Via the claim that imitative poetry prevents the immortal soul from attaining its true reward, Socrates makes the transition to a proof of the soul's immortality. He insists that the soul cannot be understood in its true nature if we consider only its association with the body, as we have been doing in this discussion. Finally, Socrates describes the rewards of justice as permitted by the rules of their discussion now that justice has first been vindicated without appeal to its reputation or rewards. He briefly reviews the rewards of justice and the penalties for injustice in this life, then narrates an elaborate myth, the myth of Er, describing the rewards and penalties that await us after death. The souls of the dead meet on a meadow to discuss their experiences of reward and punishment. They travel to a place from which they can view the whole cosmos. They choose their next lives. They are reincarnated. Socrates ends the discussion with a farewell.